Hello friends, it's Kayla. Welcome back to my channel. It's time for another casual Wednesday video. Welcome to my kitchen office. Today we're going to do some tier rankings. I do this every November. I just pick a couple random categories and I tell you my thoughts on things. The first thing we need to talk about is the Literally Dead book clubs. This is a book club that I have and we read 10 books a year from February to November. And they're horror or thriller or mystery, and every year I update you on how I feel like they went overall. We still have the live show to come this Saturday for Midnight is the Darkest Hour, but I think I can assign it one of these tiers. So this is where we've left it from the last 3 years of the book club, from iconic to solid to meh to woof. There is like an even amount of, top 2 tiers that I consider good book club picks for the group, and 2 lines of ones that didn't really go that well for the majority, or they were just kind of okay for everybody. This is not my personal rankings. We started the year with Finley Donovan Jumps the Gun. This was a sequel, first time we ever did a sequel for the book club. Do I regret it? No. Do I think that it could have gone better? Yeah. I'm gonna have to put this in meh because I know a lot of people read it and picked up the Finley Donovan series specifically so they could participate in this live show, and the whole series as a whole people aren't totally loving. Like, the first book landed for a lot of people, but at this point we're following Finley as she gets hired as a hit woman accidentally, and in this one it kind of feels like certain storylines need to wrap up a little bit more than they are, and they're being really dragged out. So I do have high hopes for the 4th book. But this one I'm gonna have to put in meh because I feel like even those of us who loved the first book or first 2 books, this one was not our favorite. Then we have The Spite House, which for me was a 3. And I think generally there wasn't too many people who absolutely loved this. The top tier for iconic is basically like things that I really enjoyed and the book club generally really enjoyed, or good things at least came of it for the people who loved it. Like, we had a mix of feelings for House of Leaves and My Heart is a Chainsaw for sure. Some people, detested them, but they ended up on a lot of people's like all-time favorites list at the same time. So that's why they ended up in iconic, because they're also some of my all-time favorites. The Spite House was a 3, so was Finley Donovan. And I also don't think a lot of people loved The Spite House. It was a range of ratings from 3 to 4, but I don't think I would put it in solid because we still have not found our perfect haunted house book. Moving on to The Writing Retreat. This one's so hard because I loved it. I want to put it at the top. But a lot of people, I think it was like half and half. My recollection of it feels like a mix of people who gave it 4 or 5 and the other half of people who gave it a 3. I'm gonna call it a solid 1. I think I would go on to recommend it, but I can't call it iconic. Whisper Down the Lane, I remember going better for more people than I thought it would. It didn't get into too much like weird territory when you just like never know when you're picking up a horror book. I think I'm gonna call that one solid. I think the most amount of people gave it a 4, even people who were hesitant going into it, and there wasn't too much that was questionable when there could have been. Now, The Devotion of Suspect X, I gave it a 3.75, I think, but part of me wants to call it iconic because a lot of people in the live show were like, this is such a great mystery novel, one that goes outside the box a little bit, one people haven't necessarily read before. But because the host, from what I remember, me among others, gave it like under a 4 or around a 4, I'm gonna call it solid. This one is about, I stopped talking about what they're about. I always do this. It's about somebody dying and basically trying to cover up this murder the entire time, but you're following a detective equally as much as that character. And there was a lot of just like piecing together a mystery that you as the reader already know the answer to, which was interesting. Whisper Down the Lane was about like this class of kindergarten students and this guy that you were following then and then in the future as a teacher, and this like satanic kind of idea, but it was rooted in reality. And The Writing Retreat was a bunch of authors who got invited to this retreat, and the host started becoming a questionable host. And then The Spite House is about this family who moves into this weird haunted house and they're running from something, their past essentially, and then you got a bunch of different POVs from different characters in time, and it was a little too fast from what I remember. The only one left is Tough, because I gave it a 4, but I know it was so many people's like favorite Riley Sager in a while. I want to put it in iconic, but I think I have to leave it in solid just because of my own thoughts on it. Oh, maybe I do actually have to put in iconic because now I'm remembering it, and there were a lot of like really fun reveals. We've got this woman who moves into this old house, and there's a woman, an elderly woman who supposedly had killed her entire family, and we slowly get reveals of what happened back in the day, as well as like current thriller activities. I guess I'm fine with an iconic because there are other 4 stars for me. They Never Learn and The Only Good Indians were 4s, and I reflect on those as some of like my favorite horror and thriller books, so I think that says a lot. A Twisted Love Story is gonna be our first woof of the year. That one was rough. Because we read For Your Own Good here a couple years ago, I just thought, obviously, this one's gonna be a huge win. And I feel like that one has left my mind. I don't remember a lot about it, so clearly not memorable. I remember it being pretty poorly written and not conceptually something that was actually interesting. It was like this romance where 2 characters are grappling with secrets they're keeping from each other, and they did something bad together back in the day, and they have to keep it away from this detective. And it was not a great one. Monstrilio, however, and I didn't realize that this was an iconic one until recently, because I know that the live show went well. A lot of people said it was their favorite book club pick of the year, but it wasn't until I just posted to my channel members for them to list like their 3 favorite books on this spreadsheet. If you want to participate, you can join the link down below. I'm doing some fun things with this spreadsheet, but so many people have listed Monstrilio as one of their favorite books of the year. And it was also in the Goodreads Choice Awards, which I wasn't expecting. I heard about it so randomly, and I was excited to introduce it to a bunch of people. I didn't realize it would become like such a thing. So I'm so happy for that author. Debut novel. We'll probably read something else from him in the future. I know it didn't work for some people, but the ones it did, it's incredible. And you're reading 4 different perspectives following the death of a young boy and the impact that the grief has on this family and friends of the family as a monster essentially grows from a piece that they have kept of the child. Then we've got The Family Game, which I gave a 3, but I'm gonna put it in solid because it's one of those books that is easy to recommend to new people to the genre, to experienced people in the genre. I feel like it is a fun one. Of all of the game-centric thrillers that I've read, because I'm always looking for good ones, this is one of the best. I'm happy to have read it. I just wish it went a little bit in a different direction, but there wasn't very many ratings for it. There was under a 3.5, so I think we can call that a win. Midnight is the Darkest Hour. I have a lot to say, and I'm gonna keep it for the live show. However, I will allot this a woof right now, confidently, because I get the feeling that this live show is gonna be an absolute roast session. It's about this woman in a small town, very religious town, and the love story. It's a love story between her and this guy who she thinks might be a vampire. Really, it's a mystery thriller from an author that I have loved. And I am clearly always looking for a thriller that's a mix of romance and thriller, but the 2 that are down here are the ones that I picked this year, and they didn't land for the general public. I'm not giving you my rating yet, but I just know that this is where it needs to be. The mystery element of it is that somebody has been found in the swamp, and people think it's like this supernatural creature who's done it, and she wants to figure out what's actually happened. Oh, and The Family Game is about a woman who gets invited into this weird wealthy family, and they play weird games around the holiday season. That's my final ranking of my own 40 picks for the book club so far. Moving on, this is not a tier ranking that I created, but I saw Haley Hughes make this video where she ranked thriller tropes. She also did a horror tropes one that we can maybe look at. I don't know how long I want this video to be, but I didn't actually watch her video because I didn't want to be spoiled for what all of the tropes are. Her categories are auto buy, pulls me in, depends on the use, pushes me away, and literally die. I've done a loose ranking of my favorite romance tropes, and since I don't read that genre very often, I thought this would make more sense to do. So we're just gonna start with All a Dream is the one I see right here, and that is my least favorite trope. However, I do think that there's something to be said about thriller tropes that have been overused for so long, and if we go a long enough time in trends in publishing or with your own personal reading, The tropes can be enjoyed again, because there was one that I read after years of not reading and it was all a dream book. I read one and it did surprise me because I wasn't expecting it. Do I like it? No, but can it still catch me off guard in a kind of good way, I guess? Next is multiple POV, which I guess that's a trope. I'm gonna say it's not an auto buy because not every thriller is going to grab my attention just because of that. Like if that was just listed as one of the only tropes, I would need a little bit more. But I do think that pulls me in. I love hearing from multiple characters. Even if it's the same scene from 10 different perspectives, I eat it up. Is it a ghost? Ooh, I'm gonna say depends on the use, because I think I like going into books knowing if it is indeed a ghost. I don't necessarily want to be questioning that because I have such a possibility of being disappointed. In a horror book, if I'm supposed to spend the whole book thinking there's a ghost and then it turns out to not be a ghost, that's annoying. If it's a thriller and it's just like constantly hinting that there's a ghost to the point that I know it's not a ghost, so just like shut up about it. So I guess in a thriller, not a horror, I'm gonna say it pushes me away. Though I do like being surprised by it being a ghost if we never thought it was a ghost. Like a plot twist like that, I'm in for. Next is blackmail, which is interesting. I'm gonna say it depends on the use, because it's not something that I want to pick up intentionally, I don't think, but it is a part of a lot of mystery thriller books. The constant looming threat. I think it's fine. Missing kid is something that I was definitely more interested in years ago, but I've read so many of them now, and there's only so many reveals that there can be that I think it gets boring. So I don't think I would pick up a mystery if that was the only intriguing factor in the synopsis. Stalker depends on the use. If we're reading from the perspective of a stalker, that's not something I really actually like. I like reading from a killer sometimes, but I don't know about just like a sneaky perspective that's constantly like, I'm looking at you, are you scared? But if our main character is worried that they have a stalker for the whole book, and that's the main, if the main mystery is who's stalking me, no, that's not interesting enough. So I guess it depends on the use, like what else is the plot. Mental health twist is an interesting one to include. I mean, I just objectively want to say it depends on the representation. I don't often like a book where the reveal is that somebody was mentally ill and that's like what, I don't know, made them the villain the whole time, or the book was tricking us into thinking one thing. But there have been books that I have liked that kind of have that. I don't know. I'm going to say it pushes me away, because if a book is listed as that, like, ooh, books with great mental health twists, I don't think I would want to pick anything from that list on purpose. Podcast is something that I'm going to say pulls me in. I have read a few of them. I don't think I'm currently super interested in that trope, but if there is a little bit of it throughout, I'm into it. I don't like true crime, and I don't listen to true crime podcasts, and a lot of podcasts in books happen to be true crime. So if it's a different type of podcast, I'd probably be more intrigued. But again, it adds that mixed media element that, yeah, it pulls me in. Creepy kid is literally die. No offense to that child, and there have been books that I've enjoyed with this trope, but it's not something that I really am seeking out on purpose. And most times if I've picked one up, it's because it was part of like a list I had to accomplish, or a video, a secret TBR. Family drama, we're gonna put it pulls me in. All the inner workings of like who's talking to who and who knows what about like the family business and what secrets did we keep from the rest of the family as children. It's not an auto buy because I need a little bit more, but that's where that goes. Amnesia. It's hard to say depends on the use, because amnesia is only really one thing, but I'm gonna leave it in the middle because I don't really have any opinion on it. Not who we thought twist. I'm gonna put that in auto buy, just because the way I'm thinking of it is like narrator wise. If we're reading portions of the book and we think that it's a diary from someone or a journal from someone or even a perspective, thinking it's one person, and then it gets revealed that that person wasn't the one narrating, that is my favorite trope. That is my all-time favorite trope. If it's just not who we thought, like the whole book, you're following a detective and they think it's one person and it turns out to be another, I feel like that's how most mystery books go. So I wouldn't consider that a trope. So if that's what she means by that, That's my favorite. Toxic friendships, I'm gonna put in pushes me away. Again, this is something I read a lot more in the past, but like messy friendship groups where one of them is like obsessed with someone else and is like stealing her identity, that tends to be the most toxic friendship. I like more toxic relationships. I'll pick up things more often if it's a toxic like romantic relationship as opposed to friendship. Cults, goes in, literally die. Again, I have read quite a few. There's not many that I've liked. In fact, some of my most hated books revolve around cults. There are some that I can appreciate, and I think that it's an important topic, and I get why other people like it. And if you consider Bunny a cult, which I think is questionable, then there is one, I guess, cult book that I've loved. Unreliable Narrator is an auto-buy for me. I just love getting tricked by the writing of something. So that's easy. Haunted House, I'm going to put in pulls me in because I'll always pick up a haunted house book, but I don't think I have found my perfect haunted house book. Even House of Leaves, which is a 5-star all-time favorite, top 3 favorite book of all time, is not the perfect haunted house book. It's a perfect horror book for me, or whatever category you want to put it in, but I still haven't found the best haunted house one. Hopefully we will as a book club someday. Police POV pushes me away. I don't think it's the worst, but I don't prefer it. I wouldn't pick it up on purpose. Speculative Twist is again an auto buy. If you really thought the entire book that it wasn't gonna pull off anything weird and then it gets weird for the last chapter, I'm eating it up. Isolated Setting, again, is an auto buy. If you combine all of these things, a speculative twist in an isolated environment with a not who you thought it was, like that, actually, I could pinpoint like 3 of my favorite thrillers that have that combination of things. I just love Locked Room. I love You Can't Escape. Only a couple characters. Nobody new is really introduced. I dig it. Return to Hometown pulls me in. I do read a ton of returning to hometown mysteries. It doesn't mean I always love them, but I love the idea of them. Revenge pushes me away. I think this naturally is a part of a lot of mystery thriller books that I've read and even liked, but if you look at some of my least loved that we just talked about in the Literally Dead Book Club list, some of my least favorites are the ones that are very revenge, action, anger focused. Dual Timeline, auto buy. I mean, it has to have some other elements, but I'm always going to be intrigued if something has multiple timelines, just like multiple POVs. Alcoholic main character. That's interesting. I do think like this is an overused trope, but I also think that it's a very realistic situation that a lot of people under immense pressure and worry are getting into. So it definitely depends on the use and how the author writes it. Morally Gray is one of my favorites. I don't have to like a character to like a book. How far will you go for your, what does that say, fan? That's interesting. Maybe it depends on the use. Like, again, that's something that exists in a lot of mysteries, and maybe it kind of ties with revenge. Whodunit depends on the use. I'm far more interested in thrillers than mysteries. So a true just like one person trying to figure out who committed one crime is not the most interesting plot for me. Good for Her can fit into revenge, so I'm gonna put it in pulls me in. I'm more likely to read from a main character who like is trying to get revenge or trying to accomplish something because of something that happened to her, or she wants retribution for herself. Because that doesn't have to be in a violent revenge way. It can be in a you're trying to take somebody down for what they did and you want them to get their comeuppance, I guess. Small Town, auto buy. Cheating Spouse is definitely like overdone at this point, so I'm gonna say pushes me away. And Rich People Drama is going in pushes me away. I have picked up a couple books that have this within it, but I've realized that it doesn't mean I'm going to love the book. Oftentimes it's like a middle ground kind of reading. I found that a lot of times it has to do with a person who has fame or celebrity status, which doesn't interest me at all. So I'm definitely picky about picking that one up. I feel like this is a nice ranking. There are definitely a good amount of tropes that I quite enjoy, but an equal amount almost in every category. I think I'll save the horror one for a horror dedicated video sometime next year, because then perhaps I can also have some recommendations in it that I haven't yet given, because I haven't done a horror video in maybe like 9 months. So wait a little bit, that will come. Last tier ranking just came to mind because I finished a couple video series this year, one of them being my childhood favorites, and I thought I would just rank quickly all of the like 60 plus that I've read over the 11 videos, 3rd through 12th grade. And then there was like one bonus episode. I think I'm gonna call it all-time favorite, ones that hold up. I'm gonna close one that I could see someone else enjoying. Like, I get it, but it wasn't for me. This one is questionable, and this one is absolutely not. And we'll just see where things land. So I read these two books that go together, Me and the Blondes and Better Than Blonde, and they were some of the worst written books that I have read. And yes, they're for children, and this whole roast session is not fair, but they're terrible. Sister Sister, I think holds up. If you're looking for like shows from back in the day that have book series, I think this is one of the best ones that I have found. There was good messaging. It was good. The Watcher is, I see how someone could enjoy it. I wouldn't recommend it to, like, I don't know what age range it's for, but it's not something I would go out of my way to say is kind of a classic that people should still be reading. It's just this girl who has a tough family life and the people who stand up for her. Like, it's got a good message, but it was a very strange book. Kind of reminded me of Stargirl, as it's from like a boy's perspective. It seems to be about a girl, but it's really about his interpretation of a girl. I'm still putting this in all-time favorite, though there was some questionable things in it. There's going to be questionable things in every category here, but Stargirl is just one of the first books that I felt really represented by somebody who didn't feel like they fit in and was just a little bit odd. After 5th grade, The World, I remember liking more than I thought I would. Everest is an all-time favorite and one that I would recommend still to this day, about a competition climbing Everest. Monster, I would still recommend. It's a book about being incarcerated, a child, a teen. And I think it's an interesting read, and there's a lot of interpretations you can take from it. Animorphs, like, I want to put in absolutely not. I was shocked by how terribly written it was, but I do see how people could still enjoy it. Amber Brown holds up. Charlotte's Web is an all-time favorite for sure. All of the animals and the farm, it was great. Dawn, California Diaries, Babysitter's Club. Maybe I should grab Babysitter's Club from here. There are so many covers here where it's like a group of girls sitting on a bed. I didn't read Christie's Great Idea. I can't remember which Babysitter Club book I read in the series, but I'm still gonna call it an all-time favorite. I think that series is absolutely iconic. And then the California Diaries, I think they hold up, but definitely not as good as the original series. The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants is not as great as I remembered it to be, so I'm putting it in holds up, which feels weird putting it in the same tier as Amber Brown, but I stand by it. Ooh, The Earth, My Butt, and Other Big Round Things, absolutely not. Again, some good messaging in it, but it's really not the story that I thought it was gonna be. It was about her brother like committing sexual assault, and I don't like how like any of it was handled. R.L. Stine, generally, I feel like I would put much higher, but this series was not great for me, but I see how people could be into it. Lord of the Flies will always be an all-time favorite. My reread was great. I think it's one of the few books that's about like a group of children and the power dynamics among them that I really love. Junie B. Jones held up more than I thought it would. Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging as an entire, this feels so weird to say, but like, because it is such an iconic book for me. But I remember saying in the video when I read the entire 10-book series that it wasn't as good as I remember, but also I'm not 14 anymore. But as far as like classic literature or The Babysitter's Club and Stargirl that I feel like stand the test of time, that one does not as much as others. Tuck Everlasting, the ending made me so angry upon reread that I'm gonna put it in holds up. I still think it's good, but the author should have done something different with it. Goosebumps, I don't think I can make a judgment just based off of the one book. Like, I'm sure Goosebumps holds up. The Undomestic Goddess, though it is an adult book, I just read it as a child, it is an all-time favorite. The reread was perfection. Misery, I mean, yeah, an all-time favorite. Fall into Darkness by Christopher Pike was so much better than I thought it would be, because I was reading some other horror-y thriller ones, and this one is definitely something that I would continue reading as an adult, like if I had nothing currently published to read. Beverly Cleary's Ramona Quimby Age 8 was way better than I thought it would be. Mary-Kate and Ashley, I'm gonna put in questionable. Like, I definitely wouldn't recommend anybody picking up, but if it's for the nostalgia, it delivers. It's just, it's not good. Stephen King, it I mean, it holds up. It's not as good as Misery. So the 21 Balloons is questionable. I don't think that the book did and said all the things that I think it should have. And it's just like this guy's journey of like waking up in this unfamiliar place. And it's just like 100 pages of mathematical equations of all the people who live in this small area and who cooks for them and who's in what family. And it was just a lot of like learnings for this guy. It had some unfortunate things to say, though I get in its time what it did and why it existed. Flowers in the Attic, I'm gonna put in questionable. I shouldn't have been reading it as a child. It is 100% an adult novel, and I think there are good things that happen for the characters, but I also don't think that the author did things correctly by these children. They get trapped in an attic, and there's much abuse. The Secret World of Og was not everything that I hoped it to be. That's okay. Judy Moody definitely holds up. Replica, I only reread the first book in the series. It's about clones. I'm gonna say questionable just because I don't know if anyone would really enjoy it nowadays. Third Grade is terrible. I see how someone could enjoy it like I did in third grade. It's just like your classic story of a girl making friends and realizing her old friends and her new friends can get along or something like that. Get Real Junior High. This one is such nostalgia. It's Sweet Valley High, sorry. I'm gonna say it holds up because it gave me exactly what I was looking for. And it's like the twins of Sweet Valley High when they're younger. Just As Long as We're Together by Judy Blume, I think holds up. It wasn't an all-time favorite. Blubber is also on here from Judy Blume. And I'm gonna put that in like someone could enjoy, but I wouldn't really recommend it to anybody. The fat representation was sad. The fat representation in Nothing's Fair in 5th grade was worse. And I'm gonna say absolutely not. Don't read that. That is sad. The messaging is awful. Like, you are allowed to be fat, but only if you're perfect in every other capacity. You have to be the nicest person, the best friend, so good at school, a great singer, and then people are allowed to be friends with you, basically. The Haunting, which is the house on Cherry Street series, or is The Haunting the series? I don't remember. I'm putting it in questionable. I don't think it was that good. Kissed by an Angel, absolutely not. One of the worst books that I revisited. There's like a reveal at the end of the book that you're basically told in the first chapter, and it makes no sense why that was supposed to be a reveal. That's all I remember about it. A guy dies and she is in love with him still, and he's an angel. Then I put Nancy Drew in here, and I think Nancy Drew holds up. It's rewritten and stuff over the decades for different audiences and for a different appeal, but it was not as enjoyable to read as I thought, based on like the language. Like, it wasn't very fun. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, I think that again is one of the best TV series ones if you want to pick something up. I thought it was quite good. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is definitely an all-time favorite. And I think the first time as a child that I was reading a book that was about somebody grappling with something more than just like their friends at school or like goofy kind of topics, it was heavier. Pippi Longstocking is an all-time favorite, which I didn't see coming, but it's made up of a series of stories of just like this quirky girl, and I liked it so much. People recommend it to me all the time. Generation Girl, no, I don't think anyone needs to be reading a Barbie book, probably. Like a recently written one, sure, but that one was weird. Then I have some Shakespeare in here, and I'm gonna put that all up into all-time favorite. We've got, what are these ones? Macbeth and Hamlet. Sleepover Friends holds up. I think it's good. I think there's some weird stuff, especially again like fat representation, very weird, but I think girls could still enjoy that. The Secret Garden holds up. I don't think it's an all-time favorite. I don't think it's the most incredible thing, but it was better than I thought. Is that the truth? Yeah, I gave it a 4. I was gonna say the fact that I just read it recently in the last 2 years and can't really remember much of the plot says something. Clueless. Do not read the Clueless book series. Just enjoy the show, just enjoy the movie. The books, absolutely not. The Chocolate Touch holds up. I think my first introduction to body horror, very unsettling. The boy touches things, turns into chocolate. That one's still being read today, so I might actually call it an all-time favorite, because all-time favorite also means like classic. Unicorn Club holds up. I think it was just as good as I remember. Alex Mack, another TV show one, not good. Not good writing. Animal Farm is still an all-time favorite. I think it is a classic, obviously, for a reason. And it's really interesting following this farm of animals and thinking about what they represent in the world. Zoe Fools Around is the Making Out series, or the Island something series, I don't remember, but it is not good. It was fun to talk about in the video because I was like telling you who was who and who was sleeping with who and like all the connections, but as a book, not well written. Ariel by Sylvia Plath is a poetry collection that I think holds up. Definitely as a teen was not taking in the messages the same way as I did this time around. Carrie is one of the only Stephen King books that I've ever reread that has kept its original rating or increased in its original rating. I loved Carrie the second time around. Very questionable things for sure in all Stephen King books, but one of the ones that I would definitely recommend if you want to go back to his originals. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I think I'm going to call an all-time favorite. It's just such a fun time, such like a classic contest story. Confessions of a Shopaholic. I see how other people could enjoy it. Of all of Sophie Kinsella's stuff, it's just not that interesting, and the romance is so much less a part of it than I remember when I was a teen reading it. So I'm gonna put it there. The Long Walk by Stephen King holds up. I think it's good. Definitely odd things in there that you don't understand why, but it was an interesting read, and obviously I love a competition, and it's a competition that you just walk until you can't anymore. Holes holds up. Liam read it in class, and so I know people are still reading it. I don't think it's like the greatest thing of all time, but it was fun. It was enjoyable. Red Sky at Morning, I don't want to call it questionable because I don't know about the content. That feels like I'm saying the content is questionable. It's just questionable enjoyment-wise. I don't think it was as good as I thought it would be, considering I wrote so many essays on it in class. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was an interesting reading experience. I'm calling it an all-time favorite, but it was one of those books that didn't add anything new. Like, I remembered every scene, every character. It was so familiar, even though I've only ever read it once. So it wasn't like the most fun reread that I've had compared to everything here, but I think that has to be an all-time favorite because it's portal fantasy. A bunch of children go into this wintry world. And then Hatchet, which is going to go into all-time favorite as well. This kid ends up in a plane crash and has to survive, and I love a survival story. So most of my top ones have things in common. They have interesting commentary about the world. They are contests. They are survival. The Undomestic Goddess is just about a girl who there's a mistaken identity when she shows up at somebody's door, and she becomes their housekeeper, and she creates a new life for herself. So this is my official ranking of all of the books that I've reread from my childhood favorites series, just in case you were wondering. And that's all of my tier ranking for the day. 3 things. I love organizing stuff, so this was just a fun way to spend a Wednesday afternoon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next with a vlog, hopefully this weekend if I finish all of the books. Bye!